Webster defines crunch time as a critical moment or period, like the end of a game, when decisive action is needed. Every sports fan knows this time in the game. Your palms sweat just a little more, your heart races just a little bit faster, and you live and die with every play until the final seconds tick off the clock and you're either celebrating a victory or disappointed by the defeat. The team at Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network understands just how critical these moments are. For us, it begins as soon as the next set of games are on the board. We evaluate the opening lines and any breaking news throughout the week. We cover each game inside and out, whether it's from inside the locker room to a huddle down on the field, the court, or the ice. We take you inside the meeting room with scouts, coaches, and executives. We have our fingers on the pulse of all the sports that we cover: the National Hockey League, NBA, college basketball, college football, and the National Football League. We are the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network, and we're here to help you find your sports advantage. After all the data has been crunched, we then turn it over to Kenneth for the best analysis around. His unique perspective in both understanding the data and how it applies to the game and how you win is the Crunch Time Sports Advantage. Are you ready? The Crunch Time Jet is fueled and ready for takeoff, and the Crunch Time Express is about to leave the station. Your VIP pass has been approved, so all aboard.
And great job as always, Jessica, getting us set up. And folks, we had on last Tuesday night the first installment of what will be four more releases from the playoff committee. So I want to thank you for joining us this evening. We'll have this second installment coming up on, if you're listening to this on Monday night, on Tuesday from the committee. But don't expect massive changes at the top from their rankings. So what I want to look at is, first of all, our numbers or rankings for the top 25 are based on the criteria that the committee itself set forward. So we're not trying to be ahead of what that committee is going to release, but we are seeing some similarities from where our numbers were last week and what the committee released out. And our top six, regardless of the order, was exactly right. In some combination, you had for the committee Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, and Ole Miss as the top six. Well, that's exactly how our top six was from the right teams. We just have them in a different order. And we're going to go ahead and jump into this week's breakdown because we had some significant changes as far as some of the top 25 from last week, because these numbers are absolutely fluid and they're going to continue to change each and every week. Same way the committee should be doing it if they were following their own bylaws. But let's go ahead and jump right into it here. And let's start with number 25. And checking in at number 25 for us this week is the South Florida Bulls. This team just been absolutely phenomenal all season long and really did a great job again last week in just taking care of business. South Florida took UTSA behind the woodshed last Thursday night and absolutely wore them thin, 55-23. So fantastic job there. As you can see, moved up 8 spots in our rankings last week by getting that big time win, setting up for South Florida a very interesting stretch run here as they will travel to Annapolis to take on the Navy Midshipmen in a big game in the American Conference. I have a feeling we may be looking at that game later this week. All right, checking in at number 24. Up 4 spots and cracking the top 25 as a newcomer this week. That is the Cincinnati Bearcats. And Cincinnati has also, in the Big 12, phenomenal job thus far in the season. Still have an opportunity to get to the Big 12 title game, and we know with that, potentially a automatic bid into the college football playoffs if they're able to continue to take care of business. 7-2 on the season, so really cannot afford to drop another game. As we now are into November, wins are very important for the rest of the way in college football. All right, checking in at number 23, and this team absolutely laid a tremendous egg last week, and that is the Louisville Cardinals, down 7 spots in our poll from last week, and really just got blindsided in their contest. At home, taking on a California team coming across multiple time zones on a short week. Cal getting it done in overtime absolutely put Louisville behind the 8 ball as far as getting to the ACC title game and potentially to the college football playoffs. Louisville sits there 7-2, don't control their destiny to get to the ACC championship game any further. So you're going to see a lot of teams from the ACC right here bunched up together just because that's how close our data says they are. That's not good for the conference. Checking in at number 22, also from the Atlantic Coast Conference, up 2 spots this week, is the Pitt Panthers. Pitt has been on an absolute heater since making a change from at the quarterback position. Since making that change, this team has absolutely been on fire, and they set up a very interesting final 3-game stretch here, starting with Notre Dame this coming weekend. But Pitt is a team that we told you a couple of weeks ago, be on the lookout because this team was absolutely taking care of business and doing it well. Also from the Atlantic Coast Conference, finally kind of playing with their food a little bit too much was the Virginia Cavaliers, and UVA, another disappointing loss for the conference as a whole for the ACC. You really wanted to have a team really kind of step up and, if possible, get to the conference championship game undefeated, but losing to Wake Forest 16-9 definitely put Virginia behind the 8 ball here as they are sitting there with an 8-2 record. We'll see if they're able to get back into the ACC championship game picture here over the next couple of weeks, but it is going to be very interesting in that conference for the stretch run here. Cracking the top 20 here, and this is another team that we have been high on for the last few weeks, and that is the Mean Green out of North Texas. This team out of Denton, Texas, absolutely been getting it done once again, and this is a team that has absolutely been playing on fire, and they're setting up a stretch run here with that 8-1 record. potentially the team that could come out of the group of 6 to make the college football playoffs. So keep an eye on the Mean Green here, up 1 spot from last week. Checking in at number 19, another team that moved up a couple of spots this week, up from number 22 to number 19 this week, the Utah Utes. And you want to talk about a team that is benefiting from some losses in conference that are absolutely playing in their favor. That would be Utah, coming off of a bye week, but seeing BYU take a loss could potentially help out Utah if they can get one more loss in conference by BYU. Could find themselves back in a rematch with a team here that we'll be talking about a little bit later on in the show. But Utah up to number 19 in our rankings. If I look at the playoff committee, Utah was actually already in their rankings, checking in at number 14, it looks like, from last week. So we have Utah just a little bit further down, but that bodes well for the Utes if they continue to win and can get just a little bit of more help there from the rest of the teams in their conference. Checking in at number 18, up 7 spots off of their win on Friday night, 38-17. That is the men of Troy. USC fight on as the Trojans absolutely got it done against Northwestern. And we are going to see when the committee comes out with their rankings on Tuesday night, how much do they move up USC from last week? Because if we look at where the committee had USC at number 19, we have them slightly at 18. So you could absolutely see the Trojans move up a few more spots from where they are currently right now. So Trojans on the move, fight on. Checking in at number 17, a team that's not ranked by the committee as of yet, but we have been high on the James Madison Dukes here for a couple of weeks. So out of the Sun Belt, and using our rankings and our rankings only, slightly above North Texas as that group of 5 leader in the clubhouse right now. Now, JMU still has a lot of work to do, but up 3 spots in our rankings at number 17. Would not be surprised to see them crack the committee's top 25, whether it's this week or next week if they continue to win. Checking in at number 16, up 7 spots this week for us is the Miami Hurricanes. And that's about in line with where the committee has Miami, coming off of a 38-10 win over Syracuse. And if I look here really quickly here, Miami was 18th for the committee last week. So we're about in range with the committee here. So would not be surprised if the committee bumps up Miami a couple of spots to about where we have them, maybe 1 or 2 spots higher. Would not be surprised by that whatsoever. But for us this week, checking in at number 16, Canes trying to find their way back into the college football playoff picture. Another team trying to find their way into the playoff picture out of the Big Ten, and that is the Michigan Wolverines. And Michigan just hanging around on the outskirts, still looking in, but this team is kind of in a really good position if you look at not only the Big Ten standings, but where the committee has them as well as where we have them. Like I said, up 3 spots from last week in our rankings to number 15. But looking at where the committee had them last week at number 21, I expect Michigan to be a little bit higher in the committee rankings this week. Would not be surprised if they're hovering somewhere around that 15 spot where we have them. So keep an eye on our rankings and the committees to kind of start to see those teams outside of the top 12 and where they're kind of positioned from where we have them and where the committee has them. Going to be fascinating to see how that continues to kind of marry itself up there. Checking in at number 14, down 3 spots this week, is the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. And for us, Tech was a fringe top 10 team last week at number 11. Looking at where the committee had them, the committee actually was a little bit lower on Tech, having them at 17 last week. So you could see Georgia Tech potentially not even in the next installment of rankings there by the committee, but still, Georgia Tech has an opportunity to kind of hang around and get their way back into the Atlantic Coast Conference championship game. Still got a lot of work to get done there for the Yellow Jackets. But right now for us, checking in at number 14, Yellow Jackets. Staying at number 13 for us this week is the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. And Notre Dame coming off of a comfortable win last week against Navy, getting that done 49-10. But as far as our data goes, did nothing to move them up whatsoever. And the committee had them last week as a top 10 team. So again, we're kind of in that same range as the committee. Somewhere between 10 and 13 is where we would have Notre Dame. So them being at number 13, we're okay with that data point as of this week. Notre Dame has a big game coming up. Got to take care of business, Irish, because one more loss during the regular season, you're going to be out of the playoffs. Checking in at number 12 this week, and we just talked about it. Absolute beatdown for BYU in their last contest against Texas Tech. Went down to Lubbock and absolutely got whitewashed, 29-7. And folks, it wasn't even that close. So down 5 spots this week is the BYU Cougars for us, coming in at number 12. When we look at where the committee had them last Tuesday night, the committee had BYU as the number 17, so right where we had them last week. So I would expect that BYU will probably be in that 12 range where we have them sitting this week. So when you're watching the committee rankings on Tuesday night, see if the committee has them about where we have them ranked, around that 12 spot. So right there on the fringe, but definitely got a lot of work to do. All right, checking in at number 11, up 1 spot, Boomer Sooner. Oklahoma checks in, moving up 1 spot from number 12 last week to number 11 this week. And if you kind of look at where the committee had Oklahoma at number 12, again, right where we have them sitting. So to see Oklahoma moving up 1 spot on their bye week with some losses of some teams that were above them, I would anticipate that's where you're going to find Oklahoma this week, somewhere around that 11 or 10 spot there. But I don't anticipate them moving up really much further than that. All right, let's go ahead and crack open this top 10 here. Checking in at number 10, moving up 4 spots off of a very hard-fought win in Kinnick. There is the Oregon Ducks. Quack attack indeed. Last second field goal, getting that victory in some high wind and raining conditions there in Iowa City, 18-16. Oregon moves up 4 spots for us because they're sitting in a very solid spot there now. As far as their strength of schedule and their strength of record, for us, you're talking about outside of the top 70 in both of those categories. But sitting there with that 8-1 record, that one loss coming early on in the season to America's team, the Indiana Hoosiers, the Ducks, if they continue to take care of business, will be punching their ticket to the college football playoffs. And if you look where the committee had the Ducks last week, Oregon was at number 9. So I would think that for the committee, you'll probably see Oregon probably in that 7 range. We're just a little bit down on the Ducks, just a little bit, because of that strength of schedule and that strength of record. Checking in at number 9, the Red Raiders of Texas Tech. And I just talked about that 29-7 win over BYU last week. If you look where the committee had Texas Tech at number 8, I expect Texas Tech for the committee to probably be in that top 7 range for the committee. I think that's where you're going to find Texas Tech coming in at probably number 7 this week for the committee. But right now, we have them at the 9 spot. All right, checking in at number 8. Off of their bye, the Texas Longhorns staying steady at number 8. So on their bye, unlike Oklahoma, did not move up or down in this week's ranking. So we have the Longhorns sitting at number 8 in a showcase showdown coming up this week as they travel to Athens to take on the Bulldogs in a must-win game situation for the Longhorns. Checking in at number 7, up 2 spots off of a very hard-fought victory, is the Vanderbilt Commodores. Going to overtime against Auburn, just fired their head coach. First of all, tip of the cap to the Auburn Tigers. They could have absolutely quit in this ball game. Did not. They came here to Music City, gave the Commodores everything that they could have ever asked for and then some. But Diego Pavia absolutely put this team on his back and got this game into overtime. Commodores able to get that victory 45-38. So moving up 2 spots for us to number 7 is the Commodores of Vanderbilt. All right, checking in at number 6, hunkered down for the Georgia Bulldogs. And this team went to Start Vegas, I should say, and took care of business. Got off to a slow start, which they have been doing all season long, but then ran out, I want to say it was like 35 or 38 straight points there against the Bulldogs of Mississippi State, getting a very comfortable 41-21 win. Honestly, folks, the final score much closer than what the game was. Mississippi State got a couple of garbage touchdowns late in that ball game to make it look a little bit more respectable, but the Dogs of Georgia had this game well in hand from midway through the first quarter to the very final end of this ball game. So Georgia sitting there with an 8-1 record. We'll be talking about them here in just a moment. But you got to feel really good if you're a Bulldog fan right now where your team is sitting. And if they continue to take care of business, will punch their way back into the college football playoff. Checking in at number 5, down 3 spots this week, fresh off of a 49-0 win over the Citadel. But what drops Ole Miss from the number 2 spot to the number 5 spot this week for us is the teams around them. Their strength of schedule gets a little bit better, and got to dock Ole Miss for having the Citadel right there. So, again, I expect Ole Miss, when the rankings come out, to be somewhere around that number 5 or number 6 there. All right, let's get inside the top four here. And all four of these teams right now would get that first round bye. So, Ohio State fans, you're right now checking in at number 4. We know the committee has you 1. Again, the top 4 teams, as we have them, will be the in some order what you see on Tuesday night from the committee, and all 4 of these teams, as it stands right now, would get that first round bye. So, Buckeyes, you're sitting in a very beautiful seat right now, undefeated, 9-0. We know what you have coming up at the very end of the season, but right now, just continue to take care of business. A lot of credit to head coach Ron Day and that tremendous team that he has right now. Just continue to take care of business, Ohio State. Speaking of a team that had to take care of business, and it literally took a toll for America's team checking in at number 3 and staying at number 3 for us off of that very hard-fought victory there in Happy Valley, 27-24. A lot of credit goes to the players of Penn State. We talked about it. This team could have absolutely quit last 2 weeks against both Ohio State and against Indiana last week. Absolutely did not quit on themselves, and that will bode very well for their evaluations going into the NFL draft process. So tip of the cap to Penn State, Indiana, head coach, America's coach, Curt Cignetti, staying there right at the number 3 spot for us this week. Checking in at number 2, fresh off of a rivalry win against LSU, the Alabama Crimson Tide, winning that ball game 20-9. Bama, I feel like, is in a very excellent spot, taking care of business with that middle of the season stretch run. Really 5 difficult games back to back to back to back to back. Crimson Tide took care of business, and right now for us, they move back up 2 spots, would secure that first round bye if the playoffs started today, which we know they don't. But if it did, Bama would definitely get that first round bye, as they are got their eyes firmly on getting to the Southeastern Conference Championship game and locking up another conference championship game. Well, checking in once again for us at the number 1 spot. And folks, the Aggies have pretty much been number 1 for us for the last 4 weeks now. So going back to week 6 when we first started tracking here, they have been either the number 2 team, and then after week 8 ascended to the number 1 spot and have absolutely been firmly planted there for us as the number 1 team in our rankings. So 9-0 Texas A&M, and absolutely took care of business against Missouri. We know Missouri's on their 3rd string quarterback, but 38-17, very strong win there by the Aggies. So tip of the cap to Coach Elko and his talented team there at College Station. So fantastic job there by the Aggies. So a quick look at how the bracket would look for us. And sorry, I don't have the graphic for it. I'll get to that here in just a moment. But right now, breaking down how our top 25 looks from a conference standpoint, the Sun Belt has 1 team. Notre Dame being the only independent being ranked. 2 teams from the American, as we talked about, with South Florida and North Texas. Out of the Atlantic Coast Conference, 5 teams out of the ACC, but the highest ranking team out of the ACC right now would be, for us, would still be Georgia Tech, but they're down at 14. So that's something to keep in mind once the committee comes out with their rankings tomorrow. How many teams from the ACC are in their top 25, and how many of those teams are in the top 15? 4 teams from the Big 12 appear in our rankings, 5 from the Big 10, 7 from the Southeastern Conference. Now, here's what I want you to take very close note of the teams from the Southeastern Conference, based on our numbers only. In the top 10, you have 6 teams from the Southeastern Conference in the top 10. You have 3 from the Big 10, 1 from the Big 12. So I'm going to get to the bracket here as it would sit for us at this very moment. And still, all precincts haven't reported yet, but right now, as I mentioned, getting the bye would be Texas A&M, Alabama, Indiana, Ohio State. The 5-12 matchup would be Ole Miss hosting the James Madison Dukes as the highest group of 12 team at the moment. In the 6-12 matchup, it would be a rematch of the Georgia Bulldogs and the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. We're going to see that game here in just a couple of weeks there at the Georgia Dome, as Georgia Tech decided to make that a neutral site game instead of playing that game at Bobby Dodd. So as it stands right now, we would get that rematch. In the 7-10 matchup, the Vanderbilt Commodores would host the Oregon Ducks in a 7-10 matchup. And folks, you want to talk about a dream matchup? The Texas Longhorns, sitting at the number 8 spot, would host the Texas Tech Red Raiders in a former Big 12 matchup. Now it will be Southeastern Conference versus the Big 12, but these old rivals go back a long time. So to get that game in the first round of the playoffs would definitely be enticing there. So that's how the bracket currently shapes up right now. All right, let's go ahead and get to the questions because we did get a couple of questions from our team. And first question is, are we really projecting the Southeastern Conference to potentially get 5 bids from the committee? Before I answer that, let me go ahead and give this. Right now, I'm projecting 5 teams have already secured their place in the college football playoffs in no particular order. The Texas A&M Aggies have locked up a bid. The Alabama Crimson Tide have locked up a bid. The Indiana Hoosiers have locked up a bid. Buckeyes of Ohio State have locked up the bid, and the Ole Miss Rebels have locked up a bid. So, to get back to that question, do I honestly think that 5 teams from the Southeastern Conference could get bids in? The conference champion, of course, whether it's as it would stand right now, Alabama would face A&M in the conference championship game on championship Saturday. Both teams would get in. It would just be the winner getting the higher seed, the loser getting the lower seed. I think Ole Miss is already in. And with a win on Saturday, I believe that the Bulldogs of Georgia would lock up a bid. So right now, that's potentially your 4 teams from the Southeastern Conference. Your SEC champ, runner-up, your 3rd place and 4th place finisher would all very likely be in at this point. If you look at where Vanderbilt, Texas, and Oklahoma all sit, not only in our rankings, but in the playoff committee rankings, the committee is already telling you if one of those teams takes care of business, they could be the fifth team in. So whether it is Vanderbilt, whether it's Texas or Oklahoma, I think one of those three teams, if they take care of business, could be the fifth team in from the Southeastern Conference. Okay, question number 2. How much trouble is the Atlantic Coast Conference in as far as their champion still getting a bid? Because remember, it is the top 5 conference champions that are guaranteed a spot. It doesn't mean that the Power 4 champions are guaranteed a spot. So as it sits right now, looking at conference champions or potential conference champions, if the ACC continues to kind of spill water on itself, you could absolutely get a doomsday scenario to where the ACC conference champion is left out, with Miami having 2 losses. Now, Georgia Tech only has 1 loss currently, but we know that they have the Bulldogs of Georgia coming up at the end of the season. You already have 2 losses by Virginia. You have 2 losses by Pitt and 2 losses by Louisville. So unless Georgia Tech is able to pull off the upset, they're in the Georgia Dome against Georgia. Best case scenario is your conference champion will have just 1 loss. There is a doomsday scenario to where the conference champion of the ACC could have 3 losses, and that is not a place you want to be sitting with a North Texas or South Florida and a James Madison out of the Sun Belt, potentially stealing a bid to borrow a March Madness term. And finally, what is my biggest surprise of this week's rankings for us? If I had to say what is the biggest surprise right now, I would say keep an eye on when the committee comes out with their rankings on Tuesday night. Just track where the following teams are as far as the committee goes. Where's Georgia Tech in the committee rankings? Is a group of 6 team in their top 25? And then where is USC in those rankings? I think that those are going to be some questions that I'm going to be jotting notes about the committee's rankings here on Tuesday night. I want to say thank you for listening or watching on the YouTube channel, streaming live on our Twitter feed at CrunchTime VIP. Want to say thank you to my tremendous team for the great job that they've done all season long. We're going to try to get this thing over the finish line this season, doing a lot of in-season analytics adjustments that have kept us in the winner's circle quite a bit this week. You'll hear more about that in the coming days, but we're set up for a very interesting game. And before I get out of here, I'm just going to give a couple of key games to watch this week in college football. Big game, 2 big games on Friday night. The Louisville Cardinals will host the 4-5 Clemson Tigers. But the bigger game is for the Oregon Ducks, as they are going to be on a short week traveling back home to Eugene to take on the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Oregon needs to make sure that they get a win in that ball game. The marquee games of the week. Boomer Sooner travels to Tuscaloosa to take on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Must win for Oklahoma. A need win for Alabama. Marquee game number 2, Texas, Georgia. Again, a need win for the Bulldogs, a must win for the Longhorns. Notre Dame and Pitt. Very important game here as both teams come in 7-2. Must win for Notre Dame. Pitt, because this is not a conference game, does not completely take them out of the running. South Florida heads up to Annapolis to take on the Navy Midshipmen, as I talked about, another marquee game of the weekend. And then finally, USC will host the Iowa Hawkeyes off of that heartbreaking loss to the Oregon Ducks there at home. Can the Hawkeyes get back up off the mat one more time to take on the USC Trojans? On behalf of our team here at the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network, enjoy the rest of your week and get ready for week 12 of the college football season. We'll talk to you soon, everybody. Have a great night, and as always, God bless.